Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Jacinta. If this is your first time here, thank you for stopping by. In this video, I'm going to show you guys how to cut and sew this Damask Bubu Gown with drapes. If it's what you love to learn, kindly watch till the end. And if you're here to subscribe, please turn the subscribe button below and also turn on the notification bell to get notified whenever I upload a new video. So without wasting much time, let's get started with this tutorial. This is the fabric I'll be using. It's a damask fabric and I have 4 yards here. Because of the drapes at the front of this dress, I'm going to be cutting the front and back separately. Starting with the back side of this dress, I'm going to fold my fabric into two. So you know this dress has a little A-line at the full length. The wideness of that A-line is what I will use to determine the width of my folded fabric. I'm doing that because that full length has the biggest measurement in this dress. I marked 17 inches. If you want yours to be wider or lesser, you go ahead and input your preferred measurement. So I'll make sure that it also has 17 inches on the other part, after which I'll go ahead and cut this out. After cutting out, I'm going to mark my starting line. From that starting line, I will mark 10 inches downwards for my bust point and 17 inches for my half length. Placing my tape on the half length, I will mark 9 inches downwards for my hip line and 24 inches for my knee line. I'll square across these lines. The fabric length is the actual full length of my client plus the folding allowance. So you go ahead and input your desired length plus the folding allowance. On the shoulder line, I'll mark 3 inches inwards for my neck width and 1 inch downwards for my neck depth and connect with a curved line to form my back neckline. On the shoulder line, I will mark off of my shoulder measurement, which is 8 inches from the center back. From that 8 inches mark, I'm going to mark an extra 6 inches. Okay, this 6 inches is for the pleat on the shoulder. Because this is a cut together sleeve, I'll be adding extra fabric from the shoulder to the bust line. I'll do that after cutting out the back piece. I'm going to be inputting my horizontal measurements now. On the bust line, I'm going to mark part of my bust circumference and add extra 2 inches allowance, 1 inch for ease and 1 inch for sewing allowance. I'm adding 1 inch because this bubu gown is not so big and my client does not want her bubu to be too big. So if you want yours to be big, if you want yours to be really big, you can do 1.5 or you can do 2 inches for the ease and they add your sewing allowance. Okay, on the half length also, I'm going to mark part of my waist circumference and add 2 inches allowance, 1 inch for ease and 1 inch for sewing allowance. On the hip line, I'm going to be adding 2 inches to my normal hip circumference. So the hip circumference I'm working with is 44 inches. I'm going to add 2 inches to it, making it 46. So I'm dividing 46 by 4. After marking quarter of 46 on my hip line, I will add 2 inches allowance, 1 inch for ease and 1 inch for sewing allowance. On my knee line, I'm going to be minusing 2 inches from my hip circumference. As you can see on the inspo, it has this curved shape. Okay, it came inside a little bit towards this knee line. Okay, that is why I'm minusing 2 inches from my hip circumference. But if you don't want yours to have that curved effect, if you want it to be straight, just go ahead and mark. So minusing 2 inches from my hip circumference, I will have 42. I will mark part of 42 on my knee line and add 2 inches allowance, 1 inch for ease and 1 inch for sewing allowance. Then on the full length, I'm going to be marking the 17 inches. Sorry, the camera was not capturing that side. So after marking that 17 inches on the full length, I'm going to go ahead now and connect all my marks. I was done connecting. I'll go ahead and cut it out now, and I'll be stopping on this bust line. Okay, so I'll not be removing anything from the bust line to the shoulder because that is where I'm going to be attaching extra fabric for my sleeve. I will also cut out the back neckline, and that will be all for the cutting of this back piece. Now for the front part, I'm going to fold my fabric into two, and just like what we did for the back piece, I'm going to mark 17 inches for the width, that is the wideness, and I'll cut it out. Bring me into golden sunlight. If I'm going with you, I know we'll get to. After cutting it out, I'm going to open it up to the right side. From the starting line, I'll mark 17 inches downwards, which is my half length, and square across. This is where my pleating is going to be starting from. So I'll go over to my ironing table now and start pleating. This is me at the ironing table. I'm marking my half length of 17 inches. This is where my pleating is going to be starting from. Afterwards, I'll fold it into two and iron the center, so that after ironing, when I open it up, I will see the center line. Or you can as well go ahead and use your chalk to mark the center of this fabric. I was done ironing and I've opened it up. Now I can easily identify where the center of this fabric is. Now for the pleating, on the side of this fabric, starting from the half length, I'll come downwards by 1 inch, and from that 1 inch I'm going to mark 2 inches downwards. Now I'm going to take that 2 inches to meet that 1 inch that I've marked. I will use my pin to secure it, and I'll do the same on the other side of the fabric. Then I'll use my iron to hold it in place. So when I make the pleats on the two sides, I'll iron it to hold the pleats in place. And also, do not iron the center. As you can see, I am ironing the two sides only. Do not iron the center because they're going to be making tinier pleats or gathers at this center. For the second pleat, I'll mark 1 inch downwards from the first pleat, and from that 1 inch, I'll mark 2 inches downwards. Then fold that 2 inches to make the 1 inch. I'll do this on both sides also, and I'll use my iron to iron it. As you're ironing, you're going to be pinning it down. So this is how I'm going to be doing it for the rest of the plates. Now, to know the actual length of this pleat, because as you're pleating, you're going to be measuring it, okay? So I want this pleat to stop at 6 inches below the hip line. As you can see in the inspo, it went below the hip. From my waist to my hip is 9 inches. Then plus the 6 inches below my hip line, that is 15 inches. So while I'm making this pleat, I'm going to be measuring it. Once it gets 15 inches, I'm going to stop. So 15 inches is the length of my pleats. I'm going to do the other pleating off camera and be back. I was done with all my pleats, and this is what it looks like. I will use my chalk to indicate the center. At that center is either I make tinier pleats or I use my thread and needle to make gathers. Please guys, do not be stingy with your likes and subscribing to my channel. It goes a long way to encourage me to drop more tutorials. Thank you as you do that. If you're making tinier pleats, you need your iron to hold it in place. I used my hand needle and thread to make gathers at that center, and this is what it looks like. So this is me ironing it to hold the pleats in place. So I'm going to take the measurement of that center pleat. So what I have is 6 inches. What I'm going to do now is to complete the full length I'm working with, because we've shortened the length of this fabric with the plate. So to do that, I'm going to minus the length I currently have. I'm going to take the length of this dress now from the shoulder to where this pleat stops. I'm going to take the length, then minus it from my client's full length. So whatever I have is what I'm going to use to cut extra fabric that will be joining to the bottom part of this plate, okay? I was done joining the extra fabric. Now I have the complete dress length plus the folding allowance, okay? So I'll go ahead now and fold my fabric into two and impute my horizontal measurements. Make sure you pin each and every one of your pleats and the two sides of the fabric are equal. I will rule my starting line. From that starting line, I will mark 10 inches down with my bust line, 17 inches for my half length, and from that half length I will mark 9 inches downwards for my hip line and 24 inches for my knee line. I'll swear across these lines. On the starting line, which is also the shoulder line, I'll mark 3 inches inwards for my neck width and 8 inches for half of my shoulder measurement. On the point where the 8 inches ended, I will mark 6 inches for the pleat on the shoulder. I will mark 2.5 inches downwards from my shoulder for my neck depth and connect with a curved line. From the neck depth, I will mark 3 inches downwards for the V neckline. On the bust line, I will mark part of my bust circumference and add 2 inches allowance, 1 inch for ease and 1 inch for sewing allowance. On the half length, I will mark part of my waist circumference and add 2 inches sewing allowance. 1 inch for ease and 1 inch for sewing allowance. Just like what we did for the back hip, I'll add 2 inches to my hip circumference and divide by 4. Then I'm going to mark whatever it gave me there and add 2 inches allowance, 1 inch for ease and 1 inch for sewing allowance. On the knee line, I will minus 2 inches from my hip circumference and mark quarter of it. Then I'll add my 2 inches allowance. On the full length, I'm going to mark 17 inches. Then I'll go ahead and connect my marks. After connecting, I'll go ahead and cut it out.
Bring me into golden sunlight. If I'm going with you, I know we'll get to the other side. Sinking in, I know this feels right. Catching a crazy love, moving through me like a wildfire, like a wildfire. Hey, I'm never the same. Whenever you're calling my name, I'm taking my sweet time.
I was done cutting. What I'm going to do now is to extend the length of my sleeve. I'll measure the wideness of my sleeve from the shoulder to the bust line, which is 10 inches. So the fabric I will cut now is going to be 10 inches. Then the length is going to be 28 inches. The while I was cutting, I made mine 26 inches, but after making those pleats on the sleeve, I realized that it did not get to where I wanted my sleeve to be. So I advise you to make yours 28 inches. Okay, so you're going to be cutting 28 inches long and 10 inches wide. This piece of fabric I'm cutting now is going to be 4 pieces. 2 will be for the front piece and 2 will be for the back piece. I will also cut the facing I will use to turn the front and back neckline. After cutting the facing, I'm going to iron hair stay to both the main fabric and the facing. For this piece of fabric that is at the center front of the gathers, I'm going to be marking its length 7 inches and the width 3 inches. After marking, I'll cut it out. I was done ironing my hairstay on the neckline of the main fabric and that of the facing, and I've also joined my sleeve extensions. As you can see, what I'm going to do now is to turn my neckline with the facing. So I've placed it front facing front. I'm going to use 1/2 inch to sew from the shoulder to that V point, then to the other shoulder. I'll also do this for the back neckline. I was on turning the necklines on the back and the front piece. What I'm going to do now is to join the 2 shoulders of the front and back piece using 1/2 inch. Now for the pleats on the sleeve, we're going to first of all fold the sleeve. After folding the sleeve, from the bottom part of your sleeve, you're going to mark 1.5 inches. Then from that 1.5 inches, you're going to mark 3 inches. Then you're going to fold the 3 inches to meet that 1.5 inches. So that's how you're going to be doing the pleat for the sleeve. So after making the first pleat, you mark 1.5 inches again. Then from the 1.5 inches, you're going to mark 3 inches. Then the 3 inches will meet the 1.5 inches. So this is where you're going to, you can do yours 2 inches interval to 4 inches depending on the amount of fabric you have. Okay, so this pleat is going to be just 3. So I'm making just 3 pleats on this sleeve. I'll do this for the 2 sides of the sleeve. Now for the place on the shoulder, remember we marked 6 inches while cutting this dress. So that's 6 inches. I'm going to mark it and I'll fold it this way, then pin it at the shoulder. When you fold it, it will be 3 inches and it will stand on its own. So from the shoulder, I'm going to mark 5.5 inches downwards on the 2 sides. That is 11 inches. I'll go back to the machine and stitch down that 11 inches. I'll also secure each of those pleats I made on the sleeve with a stitch. I'm going to place this piece of fabric on that gathers that I made and sew it down on all sides. Lastly, what I'm going to be doing to this bubu dress is to close the 2 sides and fold the hem. I'll place the front and back side, front facing front, and pin it down on the 2 sides. Make sure that the 2 sides are equal. Okay, I'll pin from the sleeve down to the full length, and I'll use 1 inch. I'll mark 1 inch on the 2 sides. That's what I'm going to use to close the 2 sides of this dress. Afterwards, I will fold the hem using the 1 inch allowance I added. And for the belt, sorry I didn't show you guys while I was cutting the belt. I totally forgot. So the belt is just a piece of fabric, a very long piece of fabric. The width will be about 4 inches. So when you close it, it's going to be 2 inches. Okay, then the length is going to be it's going to be very long, just as long as you want the length to be. Okay, so after sewing and turning it, you iron it, and that will be all for the cutting and sewing of this bubu dress. If you find this video helpful and you've learned something, please do not leave without subscribing or liking or dropping a comment. It will really go a long way to encourage me, guys, and to drop more tutorials. Thanks for watching, and see you guys in my next tutorial.